Are you ready?
Yes.
Binya.
All right, no more beer. Here we go.
Welcome to the Embracing Parenthood podcast, episode 6. I'm Sara.
And I'm Nick.
And today we're going to be talking about something that we were really passionate about, but I know some people have some different opinions on it. We're going to talk about sleep training.
So before we dive into sleep training, we want to acknowledge that we have completely forgotten what our commitments to y'all were on our last episode.
Because it's been 2 weeks.
And I have a confession to make. I think mine was health driven. And since the last time we talked, guys, I ate a metric ton of Halloween candy.
A metric ton.
I'm ashamed.
A lot.
I'm sorry.
I ate a good amount too. I didn't eat a metric ton, but
it was delicious and I have no regrets.
I ate Halloween candy and then spent an entire week for work in Colorado Springs and ate conference food for a week and airport food. So I am not feeling my best.
While you were gone, we had every meal we ate delivered. So that's not true, but at least one or two.
You ordered a pizza one night.
Yeah, we did have pizza.
I mean, you got to have pizza on boys' night.
You got to have pizza on boys' night for sure.
So anyways, we're going to start talking about sleep training. And it's something that I know it doesn't work for everybody. And some people have strong opinions on it. But
wait, what is sleep training?
Okay.
So people that don't know, what is it?
So sleep training there's different versions of sleep training too. So there's what some people will call like the extinction method. There's Ferber training, like the Ferber method. Those are the two that I'm familiar with.
But like at its basic level, sleep training is teaching a baby how to sleep.
Yes, teaching a baby how to fall asleep on its own without a sleep prop, which a sleep prop can be a lot of things, which I didn't know. A sleep prop could be you massaging your baby's back until it falls asleep. It could be a pacifier. It could be rocking your baby to sleep.
Even a bottle can become a sleep
anything
prop.
that a baby depends on outside of itself to fall asleep is considered a sleep prop. So something that I think that's easy for moms to do in the very beginning is feed their baby to sleep because they just get drowsy when they're eating. So
something that is really easy.
Something that's very common is moms will get accustomed to feeding their baby to sleep, which I think in the newborn stage there's nothing wrong with that at all. But when they're 6, 7, 8 months old and they wake up 3-4 times in the middle of the night and you have to give them a bottle to get them to fall back asleep, like that's going to drive any parent to their breaking point.
Well, yeah, but I think that something that's really important to acknowledge is that a lot of parents room share or bed share for a lot longer than we did. And
right.
So it's easy for a nursing mother to just grab a baby out of a bassinet and latch it on,
right.
Feed it. She's asleep while it's eating.
And it goes back to sleep while she's feeding it and she lays it back down and it is what it is. But for us, and we even talked about this in 2 episodes ago, we didn't breastfeed. So, I mean, we did, but not for an extended period of time. And it was always pumped milk. So we didn't have that experience. So I think the easiest way to kind of go about this is to talk about what sleep training is and then just talk about what we did, because there's no right or wrong way. You have to do what you're comfortable with and what works for you and your family.
I don't want to leave anything out though. So we have a unique experience in that you went through something with Luke that taught you.
I was very passionate about it.
How to be different with our twins. So you were proactive about our twins, but I think your experience with Luke is going to resonate more with people because it's probably very, very similar to what other people went through.
Especially because I was a first-time mom and I didn't have much help at all. So I was just at the end of my rope with not getting any sleep. When I had my first son, Luke, I was doing, most I was doing basically everything by myself. And I was just at the end of my rope. I couldn't get him to nap. I had no schedule. I had no routine. I just was winging it all day, every day. And I was exhausted. He would wake up 4 and 5 times in the middle of the night. I could only get him to go back to sleep by giving him a bottle. I would feed him to sleep, but then I would
So your sleep crutch was a bottle.
A bottle. That was his sleep prop, and rocking was his sleep prop. And then after, because he had really bad reflux issues, so I had to burp him after I fed him a bottle, or he would spit up all over himself when I'd lay him down. But then you can't burp him because I was afraid I'd wake him up. So like I would feed him to sleep, lay him down, and it would either be him spitting up everywhere and screaming from the acid reflux, or I would burp him and wake him up and have to start all over again. It was like I was exhausted. There are things when babies are at certain ages, they have suggested wake windows. And when they are like 0 to 3 months old, their wake windows, and I'm pulling this out of the top of my head, I believe it's like 45 minutes to 60 minutes. And then when they get a little bit older, the wake windows stretch. So like when they're 0 to 3 months old, they're probably taking 4 or 5 naps a day because their wake windows are so short. And then when they get older, their wake windows extend, they take less naps. And there's this very specific chart that you go by, their adjusted age. And that's how you could come up with their schedule and create their routine. But I knew nothing about that with my first. So
there's also a lot of stuff that like, I think most babies do, like is it the 30-minute?
It's called the 15-minute intruder.
Oh, I was going to say
that we're going to say
the 30-minute creeper.
You always called it the creeper. The twins would be sleeping and they wake up and he goes, "It's that creeper again." I'm like, it's not. It's called the 15-minute intruder.
Okay. So what is that?
So the intruder is, that's what like sleep training coaches call it. It has something to do with their sleep cycle. And when they are falling asleep, and after 15 minutes is when they transition into that REM sleep. And when their brain transitions from that, like just falling asleep sleep cycle into REM sleep, it can kind of startle them. Like sometimes when you're falling asleep, do you kind of jolt sometimes? Like you wake yourself up?
Yeah, like you feel like you're falling.
Yeah. It happens to babies. It's called the Moro reflex. And that's why you swaddle babies, is because it keeps them from like jolting out and waking themselves up. But it still can happen. It happens very often in that first 15 minutes, which is why when you have a baby that depends on a sleep prop, they will only take 15-minute naps, which is what Luke was doing because he was transitioning into that REM sleep. He would wake himself up and then he didn't know how to put himself back to sleep without me going and grabbing him.
So that's what sleep training is, right? Like
right.
It's teaching them to put themselves back to sleep.
Right. So I have a friend of mine, a great friend of mine. She was actually my babysitter when I was little, and now she's like my big sister, but she was a professional nanny, like for her whole career. She's incredible with children. She's like Mary Poppins. So when Luke was a baby and I was didn't know what to do, I called her one day and she came over and she taught me how to swaddle him correctly. And she had him like this bottomless burrito, like as tight as I could imagine. Like I was just like gently wrapping a blanket over him and like, oh, so sweet. But she's like, no, you have to swaddle him tight because
get him in there. Yeah.
Like, because he was busting his arms out. So she taught me about the sleep training and she taught me about the schedule, and she'd be like, he's 2 months old and he hasn't had a nap in 4 hours. Like that, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? What am I doing? I'm surviving. She's like, no, I'm coming over. And so she kind of talked me through the basics, but when it came down to it, when I went to actually sleep train him, let me back up. After doing my research, I decided that the extinction method, which is where you put your baby down in their crib and you at 7:00 and you don't go back in until 7 a.m, no matter what. I decided that wasn't for me. I couldn't do it. So the method that I chose is called the Ferber method. So you put your baby down and you go in and out of the room in increments of like, I think it's like a minute for however many months they are.
Yeah, you let them fuss.
Yeah, so if they're 6 months old, you give them 6 minutes to fuss and try and put themselves to sleep.
I think it's weeks.
Is it weeks? I think you're right. I think it's weeks. So if they're 12 weeks old, you give them 12. No, that's not right either.
Yeah, I think it is.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, then I didn't start at however many weeks 6 months old is. I started at like 5 minutes.
26.
I definitely didn't wait that long.
Maybe it's not a minute, but
regardless, I put Luke down in his crib and I ended up hiring a sleep coach. I paid a lady who was
That's a really important part of this. Like,
Yes.
you don't have to be super informative on it because I don't remember either. I don't want to like steer somebody down the wrong path, but we hired professionals.
So I hired a woman. Her name is Katie Pitts with Sleepwise. She's a certified sleep coach, and I hired her. I'm fairly certain I hired her when it was just her doing her sleep coaching, and she had just started out. And now she has like 50 sleep coaches under her, and
they're amazing.
They are amazing. She has grown. Her business has blown up. But I owe her everything.
I had a hard time.
Yeah.
I had a similar experience to what Sara experienced with Luke, but Sara had the experience with Luke. So she
I was a little bit more confident in what I was doing too.
Yeah. I mean, she pushed some of the things that she had learned, through the process through Katie, on us early on. So I didn't have all of the same anxieties, but I mean, I was watching those babies like a hawk. When the twins first came home, they were eating every 2 hours. I think we've covered that a couple of times. Like, they were eating all the time.
Yeah.
And they ate slow, like 45 minutes, 50 minutes.
We didn't start sleep training the twins until they were 6 months old too, because they were 4 months adjusted.
We actually, they were 7 months old. So
they're like 5 months adjusted.
Yeah. But what we were doing at first, when we brought them home, we had been in the NICU with them during the day, every day. And the staffs, if you've ever been in the NICU, you know the staffs in the NICU are incredible. Those people are saints. What
Angels
they do
on earth
is special. Caring for sick babies, newborns, is hard. They're having a hard time. I don't know how those people keep their composure, but they would kick us out.
Mm-hmm.
They would basically make us leave. They had stuff to do.
It was for their shift change, and they would round on the babies and stuff.
So the doctors and the nurses would do all their tests and all the PT and all the things that they needed to do on our kids at night when they kicked us out. So when we brought them home, they wanted to be up all night long.
They also were used.
Hard.
They were used to sleeping under fluorescent lights for 2 weeks. They don't turn the lights out in the NICU. They're on.
Not like the dark at first.
Oh my gosh, forgot about that.
So we room shared for a little while. I don't remember how long. I could not tell you.
I don't know either. I don't remember.
It was probably longer than we think it was, because that time in our lives was a blip.
Maybe like 2 weeks.
I think it was longer than that.
3 weeks. I don't know.
No, it was a long time.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you if my life depended on it.
I couldn't tell you either. But their cribs sat empty for a long time, and they weren't even napping in their cribs. They were napping in
all over the house.
Pack and plays, bassinets, little
loungers,
rockers and loungers, and like everywhere. And I remember just being so tired one day, and we were like, we're going to try.
Well, I think what was different with the twins than my experience with Luke is that Luke was a normal size full-term baby. Yeah. So by 6 months old, he was well past the point of needing a bottle in the middle of the night. Like, we didn't have to worry about his health and well-being. But with the twins, we were still very unsure. Like, is it safe to not give them a bottle in the middle of the night anymore?
They weren't eating but like 2 ounces at one time.
Not by the time we were sleep training.
No. But I mean, early on.
Yeah.
I'm talking about when they went into their cribs to sleep for the first time, they were only eating 2 ounces.
Maybe not even that much.
So like they were eating
ounce and a half.
What, 8-10 times a day? It was a lot.
I think it was, I want to say 10 to 12.
So we put them in their cribs, and I think we've covered this a few times. Like, we had to do shift work, right? But they just never, when we put them in their crib for that like night sleep, because they still, during the day, they still slept, all over the house. But when we put them down for that night sleep, that person didn't get any sleep.
Mm-mm.
You were feeding them all night long. And Sara had kept telling me that we have to like get them to eat more. As they grew, they need to eat more.
In a feeding, so we can decrease the feeds.
If you feed them more, they'll sleep longer, they'll sleep better. They're waking up because they need to eat again. They're hungry.
Yeah.
And I had a really hard time with that because feeding was so hard. And so we had just sort of hit some milestones. It was the first time in a month or so when they first started eating like 3 ounces, maybe 3 or 4 ounces, where they finally slept for a good portion of that 2 hours or 3 hour window. Mm-hmm. Right. So for me, I'm like, selfishly, Yes. I fed them both. They ate quicker. They were eating in like 20 or 30 minutes, which was significantly faster. You could get them both fed in, 45 minutes to an hour. And then you had like an hour or two to close your eyes before that alarm went off, where you had to get up, throw the bottles back on the warmer, get one up and feed them. And that time became so important for me that I had a really hard time adjusting from there. It was like the first shift in our schedule where we were finally sleeping a little bit over those nights. And you were still pushing us to like hire a sleep coach, because I wasn't receptive to what you were trying to say about the next step. I needed somebody else to kind of say,
you needed a hired third party outside perspective to tell you, yes, it's okay, because you were just so afraid. I was ripping the rug out from underneath you guys.
I was freaking out. I always wanted what's best for them, for sure.
I know.
But like it was.
And I did too.
It was also selfish. It was selfish in the sense that they're finally sleeping good. They're eating a ton. It's still really hard, but I'm finally sleeping a little bit. Like, why are we rocking the boat? Do we need to rock the boat further? I don't know.
But I'm like, sleep is good for them. They need to have longer stretches of sleep. That's when their brain develops. That's when they grow. It helps everything. So I was pushing for longer sleep stretches.
So we hired Katie's team again, but I want to flip it back to you, because you had Luke come in before you had implemented some of the things for the twins. Like you were able to kind of do some of the things you learned from having a sleep coach with Luke for the twins early on.
I will say though that my 2 sleep training experiences were incredibly different. The twins were still, even with a hired sleep coach, way harder than a full-term singleton baby. Luke at 6 months old was napping 15, 20 minutes at a time, a couple times a day. He was still waking up. He probably was still taking 3 feeds a night in the middle of the night at 6 months old, which is not.
Were you room sharing? Was he in a crib?
No, he was always in his own crib. I had him in, oh gosh, I hate to even admit it, but I had him in the rock and play, that Fisher Price rocker or whatever, next to my bed, which is not an approved sleep device anymore, but it was then. But I had him in that next to my bed for probably maybe a month or 2. He was probably in my room for a month or 2. But I was doing naps though in his crib or in the lounger, the baby lounger. At 6 months old, like I said, he wasn't sleeping. I hired my friend that I worked with at the hospital, who was an ultrasound tech when I was pregnant, was like, hey, have you ever heard of this book called Baby Wise? And I'm like, no, I haven't. And then another guy that I worked with, he had just had a baby and he was like, you've read Baby Wise, right? And I'm like, why is everyone talking about Baby Wise? I guess I got to get this book. And I read it and I'm like, oh my gosh, you follow a schedule. It's they eat and then they play and then they sleep. And that pattern is the way in which you should like schedule your entire life with kids. Eat, play, sleep, eat, play, sleep over and over again until the day is done. And you have a sleep routine. Babies thrive on routine. They can't tell what time it is. But when you start that routine in their brain, it goes, oh, it's time for me to start going to sleep. So I learned from the sleep coach what worked for me and what I wanted our sleep routine to look like. And for Luke, that was getting his bottle for bed, then giving him a bath, then reading a book. And then while I got him dressed for bed, I did lotion, I'd sing a little song, I'd put his sleep sack on him, read a book, and then go to bed. That was our routine every night. And I was doing bath bottle bed. And she was like, no, because even if he's getting just a little bit drowsy during that bottle, that's still teaching him to get a bottle to go to sleep. So he's like, flip that in your routine. And it made all the difference in the world. It took 3 nights. Night 2 was the worst. Night 1 was, oh my God, why didn't I do this sooner? They always say night 2 is the worst. So again, I did the Ferber method with him, which is where I did our bedtime routine. And I think also too, it's important. You have to do things throughout the day to be confident enough to where you're setting them up for success at night. I would track how many ounces he got of formula throughout the day. But that way I would know, okay, it's okay if he's crying. It's not because he's hungry and he hasn't had enough to eat today, because he had X amount of ounces during the day. I was tracking how many dirty and wet diapers, how many ounces he had and everything, so that at night I was like, all right, it's go time. We're ready to go. He's ready to go. Let's do it.
So like he's had enough nutrition.
Right. Like I'm not depriving him of anything. Sure. So I would do our routine. I would put him in his crib to go to bed. And then I would stand outside. Actually, I take that back. The first night I got a chair and I put a chair next to the bed and I would just sit.
Sleep training is hard, y'all.
It's hard. It's hard to remember because it's been so long and you honestly block out a lot of that. But I put a chair next to the bed and he would start to cry and I wouldn't touch him, but I would just say, it's okay. Mommy's here. It's time to go night-night. Night-night was like our sleep word. It's time to go night-night. And then.
You still do that to me.
I know. Time to go night-night, Nick. Night-night, Nick. And then I would then like 30 minutes later, if he was good, I would move the chair to like the doorway. And then he was good from there. Then I would go outside the door. And if he would cry, I would just walk up to him every like 5 minutes. Probably started at 5 and then worked my way up to like 15. But I never really let him cry for more than 15 minutes. My heart couldn't take it. So, but it was, I don't even think I had to wait that long. And the first night he went to sleep and he woke up one time and I did went in and I just said, it's time to go night night. I just kind of talked to him a little bit and let him know that I was there, but I wasn't like abandoning him. And then night 2, he got me all excited. I thought he was sleep trained and so close to sleeping through the night. I think like he woke up like 6 or 7 times. But anyways, I did the same thing. And then after it was night 1, 2, and 3. And then on the 4th night, he slept through the night and that was it. Never looked back.
So when I met you, he was sleeping through the night. And
oh, he had been sleeping through the night for a year.
Yeah, he was sleeping through the night. And like he would fuss sometimes a little bit early on.
Going down, yeah.
But it was always vocal protest. It was never like screaming.
No,
crying.
He would just be like, man, I don't want to go to bed. But it wasn't like.
No, I mean, he wasn't verbal.
Well, but that's what his cry meant.
Yeah. Like you knew that wasn't a real cry.
Right.
Like nothing was wrong. He was just like, I want attention. Fussing
a little bit. Yeah.
So when the twins were born, obviously that was my first like baby experience. We've kind of talked about that a little bit, but the feed thing really messes with you. When you feed your child so often.
Yeah.
And you take that shift, like you're on it and they don't let up. Like you have to feed the same twin first forever. They're always on that schedule. Otherwise, you think about it. If they feed every 2 hours.
I don't remember that.
It was always Logan.
I mean, that makes sense.
Always. He was always so hungry. And Landon would just be like, hurry up.
They're still that same way with food.
Yeah. To get your kid to eat more, you have to let them be hungry.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing that you, at that stage, do for your kid. They're used to eating at a very regular frequency, which is not good for you. It's not good for the baby. You're exhausted. They're exhausted. And as they grow and get older, they're supposed to space that out because eventually they got to get to, 3-4 meals a day like adults do. And no, it is hard to make your baby be hungry. It's hard to tell your baby, no, it's not time to eat yet. Even though you know that like a month ago, it was time to eat. And that's where I struggled. I struggled with, in order to get them to eat more, we have to let them be a little bit hungry. Man.
Or force feed them to eat more so that they could go longer, which was just as hard. I mean, you couldn't do that either. They would spit it all up.
We didn't have any success with that. We had a hard time getting them to eat and staying awake.
Yeah.
Because we didn't want them to become dependent on the bottle to get sleep. You never let your baby fall asleep while eating, ever. Like
not after the newborn phase.
After the newborn phase, I mean. Sarah kind of ingrained that in my mind early on. And I mean, there were periods of time where like I'm feeding a baby with a toe in a rocker and I got one in my arm. I used to rig up little contraptions to like tilt the bottle the right way.
Always had something rigged. I'm like, what is he doing in there?
The boppy pillow and all
that thing you bought on Amazon, those bottle holders.
Oh yeah, those are awesome.
Those actually, once they got older, those things actually worked.
Yeah. So that I could have less.
Except you would look over at the other one and you look back at the first one and the bottle would have come out of its mouth and it's just pouring milk all over their face and their clothes are soaked and you're like, oh, whoopsie.
Side note, never, ever, ever put your child in button or snap onesies.
Oh my gosh, that was the funniest. Now it's funny. It was not funny at the time. Can I tell the story?
I'm sorry, y'all.
I had registered for these cute little onesie outfits and they snapped all the way from the neck.
They were not that cute.
All the way down to the toe. Like probably had 20 snaps.
Oh my gosh. You were so ridiculous.
What?
Like 400 snacks.
No, there were, but there's 40 because there were 2 babies. And I remember in the middle of the night, one night, he was like, every curse word under the sun. I'm not even going to repeat what you said, but he made me get rid of all snapped pajamas. He's like, there are zippers and magnets. Why do we have PJs with snaps? No more. That was like, no more snaps were allowed in the house for nighttime use.
That was
pajamas.
Following a disgustingly awful blowout diaper in the middle of the night during a feed.
Never forget.
And I like it was
Snaps.
It was Sarah's night to sleep, and I'm in the dark changing an awful diaper while also feeding another baby, and I'm like,
F these snaps.
I cannot get this baby dressed. What is wrong? Where is this button? It was awful. So anyway, you have two twin babies. You're trying to get them to eat more, and it's just not something that you could do naturally. You can't. I needed somebody else other than my wife to say, it's okay to let them go 4 hours to eat, even though they've never done that before.
You needed a hired professional to tell you that your wife was right.
So we paid money for someone to tell us that my wife was right. And
Best money ever.
I don't mean to disparage Sarah in any way, shape, or form. That was informative for us both. It was very difficult to
I needed it for
twins.
the twin. The twins were a completely different ball game than one. If we had just had one baby the second time, I would have not. I'm very confident that I would not have needed to hire somebody a second time around.
You could sleep train now. For one, you could teach someone else how to sleep train their baby.
I did.
Yeah.
I taught my friend how to sleep train her second after her first was a naturally good sleeper, and she thought people that sleep trained their children were mean until she had a child that wouldn't sleep. And then she asked for, how did you do that?
Let us be clear. If your child is naturally a good sleeper,
you are very lucky.
You are a jerk.
You did something right in your life.
How dare you?
You did something right in your life. But anyways, so
nobody gets 2 though. You only get 1, and you should truly soak
I got
it up.
0 naturally good sleepers. So
that's true. And so we have twins that are not sleeping, and then magically by 6.5 months, 2 weeks, Luke took 4 days. The twins took 2 weeks.
At least.
Maybe 3.
The night was easier for them than naps. They were really hard to get napping well.
Even after we sleep trained the twins, we still did a middle of the night feed for a long time.
We did a dream. It wasn't a dream feed. It was like a 5 a.m. or like a 4 a.m. feed, right?
Oh, it was 100% 3 a.m.
Was it 3?
Yeah, it was 3. Because they went down.
We didn't do it for very long though. Maybe like 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
I don't know. I remember doing it for a while.
I don't remember, but
I think it was, they went down at 7, they got up at 7, and it was like 3:30 in the morning.
We just did
we fed
one.
them right in the middle. Because I would get up at 3:15, put the bottles on the warmer.
How do you remember that?
Remember we had a warmer in the bathroom attached to their bedroom, like upstairs.
I know, I remember that.
And we would get it ready.
I don't remember what time.
It was already hot, like when we got up in the middle of the night.
Yeah. We would get up like 15 minutes before the feed to warm the bottles.
We kept the bottles. We had a mini fridge in our bedroom upstairs. Everything was upstairs. So the kitchen was downstairs. So we had to get a little fridge upstairs, and we kept the bottle upstairs.
In our room.
Throw them in the warmer, go feed them. And you'd feed 2 at a time by that point. That we had this little pillow, like this twin pillow, and you would like hold the bottles and their heads at the same time and feed them both. And they would, at that point in time, they were eating in like 20, 25 minutes.
Were we feeding them both at the same time by that point? I don't remember.
After they were sleep trained. That was the middle of the night.
I guess you're right. Yeah.
We did that for a while.
Yeah.
Months. Because they were so little.
Yeah.
But even transitioning from waking up every 2 hours to waking up once in 12 hours was so crucial for our mental health.
It was like we only have to wake up once in the middle of the night.
It was amazing.
Could you imagine if we had to wake up at 3 a.m. now in the middle of the night? We'd have to take off work the next day.
This is going to blow your mind. A parent of one child does not get back to their pre-child sleep wellness until their child is 6 years old.
What?
It takes your body 6 years to adjust. Something happens to our bodies chemically, physically, where we don't sleep as deeply until our kids are a certain age. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because we're on high alert, like we're listening for something, we're worried about them, whatever it is, but it takes years.
I believe that. If you're out of town and it's just me, I don't sleep as well because there's nobody else to hear. But if you're here and like I know you're monitoring, like sometimes we'll take turns, I can sleep just fine because I know you've got it. Yeah. But if I'm by myself, yeah, you're right. I guess that's true. I can see that.
So the big perks of sleep training are it's really helpful to have someone who has done the research, who knows kind of what works and what doesn't, tell you what to do. And every baby's a little different. And so these people also know like the ins and outs of like what you're experiencing. And if someone hasn't experienced that, they probably haven't gotten the advice necessary to get you past that point. But it's also helpful to have someone else tell you to do the hard thing.
It's, yeah, for me with Luke, because, you know, Luke was full term and healthy and everything. What they did for me, and you have access, there were different packages, but there was one where like we talked about his sleep space and making his environment the most productive for healthy sleep. So that was blacking out the windows. Any amount of light will stimulate a baby. So even like he had a smoke detector in his room with a green light on it. And she made me put black electrical tape over that light.
That boy's room was dark.
It needs to be like, you can't see your hand in front of your face dark.
And we did the same thing with the twins.
Yeah.
I bought that stick and peel stuff for their windows. It was pitch black.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I forgot about that. But so we would talk about his sleep space and making sure his crib was safe, like no bumpers on the crib, and setting him up for success in his room. But I would have access to her until like midnight that first night. So like if things had gone really south, I could text her for support, just to be my support system. Like, you're doing the right thing. It's okay. Go in and check on him now.
Were there other parts of that space being like, he didn't play in his room much, right?
Yeah. So she wanted his room to be his sleep sanctuary, is the way she described it. So like we had no toys in his room ever. He has toys in his room now, but he's, 6. But the twins still don't have toys in their room.
Just books.
Just books. But I didn't even have books in Luke's room. No. I didn't have this. They were in his closet.
And sometimes now at the twins' age, they're 3 now. Sometimes they sleep better when they're separated, but sometimes they sleep. Well, most nights they sleep together and they play until they go to sleep.
They play until they drop. Yeah, but they just play with each other and look out the window.
You can't keep them in the same room and take them away from each other. They're going to have each other to play with.
Do you know what they did for nap today?
What?
I put Landon in Lainey's room just because they were so wound up. I had to separate them. But I gave Landon the baby hippo and the baby seal. Yeah. And Logan got out of bed, went into Lainey's room while Landon was asleep, took them out of his bed and put them in his bed.
They're so ridiculous.
I'm like, did you go in there and steal your brother's stuffed animal while he was asleep? You're rotten.
Look, if you need a sleep coach, don't hesitate. It can be expensive, but your mental health it's the best investment I've ever made. So important. And read a book, get in a group online. Some of those people can be really helpful. Try the the affordable things, the things that you can do first. But if you can afford it and you're having doubts, reach out. We'll give you some names. We've got some great people that you can talk to. And if you have questions, let us know.
You can talk to me even. I mean, I'm happy to help anybody or answer any questions about my experience. But there are some resources. I would order the Baby Wise book on Amazon. You could get them used. They're like $5 or $6. Then you can also join the Facebook group, the Baby Wise Facebook group, which is free. And Katie Pitts.
Those people are awesome.
Yeah, they're great. And there's thousands and thousands of members. And there's actually even a Baby Wise for multiples group, like if you have twins or multiples. But they'll do, like Katie Pitts will join. She used to, I don't know if she does it anymore because I'm not in the group anymore, but she would do a free Q&A every Monday. And I would have it like an alert set when she would post, because I would always hop on. She answered the first 5 questions for free every week. And I probably was the first one every week to ask a question. And she would give me this long-winded answer and was very helpful. So there are definitely some free resources out there if you don't have the means to hire a coach.
I also think it's really important for parents to know that your child's brain develops when they sleep.
Right.
So when your kid isn't getting enough sleep, their brain isn't developing enough. And that creates learning disorders, learning deficits, maturation deficits. They're not getting to the places they need to get if they're not getting enough sleep. And, if you're room sharing because you need it, but it's not good for your baby.
You could still sleep train. They have a whole thing for sleep training if you room share.
Sure.
It's still an option.
But there are a lot of people out there that do it because that bond is so important to them, but it may be keeping their baby from getting quality sleep. There's a lot of people that don't do the things that we've talked about that set that room up for success. So their kid lays in bed and plays and wakes up and plays. And you may think that that's quality time for your kid, the alone time, the experience, but teaching your kid to sleep is one of the best things you can do. And you can do all those things where you let them play by putting them to bed early enough where they can do that stuff or whatever, and still have a kid that knows how to put themselves to sleep, knows how to get through those little things, the shakes, the
moral reflex,
the creeper,
the intruder.
You can do all that, and you're doing a good for yourself and for your baby.
I totally misspoke. It's the 45-minute intruder, not the 15-minute intruder. I knew that was wrong.
Sworn it was 30.
It's 45 minutes.
Yeah, so it's when they hit that first deep REM cycle.
Not 15. That made me sound stupid.
The cycles are on 15 minutes because it's a 60-minute sleep cycle, or no, a 90-minute sleep cycle.
It's a 45-minute intruder.
Yeah, so halfway through, so your sleep cycle's, I think, on 90 minutes, and it may be shorter when you're a baby, but I don't know. Anyway, 45 minutes. It's the 45-minute intruder, and like clockwork, you'll see babies waking up.
Mm-hmm. 45. Like I could time it. I could be outside the room at 44 and change, and right at 45, start waking up every time.
So what commitments are we going to make to...
Ooh, I know what I'm going to do.
What are you going to do?
I am back on my game with my
health and fitness,
eating healthy. And I don't have the time to work out. I tried to do the 5 a.m. thing and I can't, and I'm not going to say that I can because I can't. I don't like it. And I'm going to just do what I can at home and go for walks and ride the Peloton. But my eating is where I'm going to really buckle down.
I am going to commit to eat less Halloween candy.
There's no more. So,
all right, I got to pick something else. God, I was really serious about the Halloween candy thing. I think one of the things that I want to focus on is listening to our children more. The twins have become very vocal, and they've started protesting when they don't want something. And it kind of relates to sleep training. They don't want to go to bed ever. They don't want to go to bed, but I want to listen to them. I want to hear them more instead of like, come on, like I only get like 2 hours with them before they go to bed when I get home from work.
Maybe even.
I want to start trying to engage with them on their level and figure out, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. I need to figure out what they have their own language, by the way.
They have their own language and they have very strong opinions already.
Yeah. And I'm like, dude, I don't speak. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Isn't it funny that Luke used to talk like that too, and they weren't even babies at the same time? Have
you never seen Rugrats? He still speaks it. He taught them how to do that.
You think?
I have no idea. That show was awesome.
We're like, are you speaking Swahili? What is going on?
Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope it was informative. If there's anything we can do to help you with sleep training or answer any questions, or if you need anything at all, don't hesitate to reach out because we really enjoy talking about this stuff. We've got some really cool experiences. And also, we kind of want to hear about yours too.
Yeah. And of course, please check out The Embrace at www.theembrace.com. Follow us on Instagram.
Follow us, share.
And YouTube.
Talk about us, subscribe, and help us grow. And the bigger we get, the better we're going to get. And this is only the beginning. The future is bright. Thanks, y'all.
Bye. There was a lot of rambling.
It's 47 minutes.
Ooh,
a lot of there's about 10 minutes.
We were redundant.
Why do you not want to do that?
that'd be boring.
Sleep training?
I think the educational stuff is really good stuff.
I can
Plus,
talk
it gave
about
you were like the star of that episode.